What's going on, people? It's your boy Malik Washington, back at it again with another episode of the BMB. How you all doing this fine day or evening, wherever you all reside? I hope that all you I hope that you all are well and that you're attempting to be successful at everything that you do in this life. That you're accomplishing the goals that you wish to accomplish, that are in your sights to do. So I hope everything fares with you on those aspects of your lives, and that whatever trials and tribulations you may face, that you're taking them as either lessons learned, or perhaps you're asking for strength to be able to persevere through those things that you're going through. And for those of you that are facing those problems as human beings, I empathize with you with whatever it is that you're going through, especially matters of which I similarly have been through myself as a human being and still continue to go through as a human being. Nonetheless, we all need some degrees of encouragement, some exhortation here and there, someone to talk to, you name it. Just know, I'm a listening ear. If you want to express to me what's your issues or anyone else, I'd recommend going to people that you can confide in, especially if you're having a hard time in this life that we live in, because it's difficult. Life is hard in general, and that can certainly never be denied as you continue to age. I'm only 27 and I have a long ways to go, however long that may be. I don't know. Could be short-lived. Who knows? Depends on the creator above as to whether if I'm going to live long or live short. But nonetheless, I'm assuming and presupposing that I do live long. I'm hoping that, I learn and I grow from all those matters that happen in my life. Because at the end of the day, I view it as a form of character development, personal development, to help me further along the way of life, especially when it comes to dealing with just things I can't control, as well as people in general. So we'll leave it right there on that. But furthering along this conversation and this episode, welcome back to Breaking Mental Barriers. As you all know, my name is Malik Washington. And this episode is going to be discussing Chicago's teen takeovers, or maybe just even the takeovers in general that have been happening throughout the United States. Particularly, I want to discuss a couple of things that was said. One statement that was made by Johnson, another statement that was made by Lori Lightfoot, and maybe some other quotes here and there, depending on how my brain puts everything together. But these are the things I kind of want to discuss because I find it quite disappointing how this mayor's response to certain matters in Chicago are being held, and he's not really taking it as grave as I would like him to. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that way, and for what that reason is, I don't know why. But as you all know, in Chicago, there has been some, and it's nothing new, obviously, but there's been upticks, obviously, of these black teenagers going around and basically wreaking havoc throughout the innards of the city, right? And the innermost parts of the city. And as you've all seen in quite a few videos that have been released out there by the teenagers themselves, and they're so idiotic in that respect as well, but they basically are vandalizing buildings, vandalizing property. They are smashing car windows. They're going around, they're beating people up. They're acting like a mob, and they're basically bullying and messing with tourists, taking things from them, you name it. These aren't exactly, as Brandon would call it, kids who are starving of opportunities. From the looks of it, they're taking the opportunity to do wrong things purposefully. And with that being said, it's causing a lot of turmoil throughout the city of Chicago, in part because there are people like Johnson who sit there and they pretend like these issues are not happening before them. And even when they're happening before them, like the typical Democrat progressive Democrat at that. They tend to purposefully misdirect people into thinking that this is okay. And this is what I've been saying quite for a little bit of time now, that it seems like Democrats are purposefully trying to convince you that what people are doing and how they think, especially if it's extremely radical, if it's irrational, and if it's not right, they come up with every excuse in the world for why it's okay to deliberately misdirect common sense somewhere else and make you believe that what these teenagers are doing is a result of what's happening with corporations. Like, one of the things he said in particular, and he was on Fox 32, and they asked him his views on the situation that happened. He could not, he was filibustering, and he basically was trying to go into this notion that corporations are taking away from people, they are looting from people, as opposed to what the teenagers are doing. The teenagers are essentially taking back what has been owed of them, and that they are being starved of opportunities, and this is the most critical thing to point out, that basically it's wrong to quote unquote demonize these children for what they're currently doing. Almost as if, to me, he's making it seem as if it's a form of reparations, right? This talking point kind of reminds me of back when BLM was rioting as the result of George Floyd dying at the hands of forgot that police officer's name. I believe it's Derek Chauvin. When he died at the hands of Derek Chauvin, in addition to the fentanyl overdose that he had in his system, some people from the BLM protest were actually justifying why it was okay for a lot of black people not only just rioting, but going into, huge corporations, taking away things such as clothes, shoes, electronics, food, groceries, you name it. And it wasn't theirs to begin with. They didn't pay for it. They certainly didn't ask for permission or anything of that sort. They're taken away from these businesses, and some of the people were basically saying that this was the language of the unheard. But more importantly, they were stating that these people were basically tired of America's politics and the 400 years of oppression that have happened throughout the United States. And I found it to be quite counterintuitive because, for one, when you all are amassed in that large of a crowd, 9 times out of 10, you're bound to attract some bad seeds who otherwise are not going to be there because you're fighting for something that you believe is a legit cause, but actually because they find it as a opportune moment to actually go and do the crime. Because guess what? Presumably, by you all being out there doing what you're doing before the masses are focused on you. So while they're focused on you, they could easily organize as a syndicate, go into these buildings or corporations and do as they so choose and think that they're going to get away with the crime, which a lot of them did. And I guarantee you a lot of them are probably still walking around doing what they choose to do. Because for one, we have very lenient policies in these cities that are not prosecuting these criminals to the fullest extent of the law, but rather allowing them to easily just walk around and do whatever they so choose. If I know a lot of these people from the hood of the black community, a lot of them are doing this not because they give a shit about 400 years of oppression. They're doing it for the most part because, well, it was a chance for them to go and take whatever it is they wanted to do. Why would I say this? Why do I think that this is the case? And if you think I'm lying, I give you a perfect example. I forget which news network it was on, but it was one of the Chicago news networks where this young man was caught. He was one of the perpetrators, the ones who were purloining these corporations. They asked him, that one of the reporters said, "Why did you decide to go with the group and rob these stores?" He said, "Because it was it was a fine time to do so." He said this was the opportunity to go get that bread, make that money. I'm paraphrasing what he's basically saying, but essentially that's what he was getting at. That basically this was a time everybody was distracted. We were all doing what we thought was right at the time. Everybody was doing what they were doing. They were distracted. So we went in. It was a fine time to do it. Never did he mention 400 years. Never did he mention white supremacy. Also didn't mention racism. None of which the BLM protesters argued it was because they were tired of 400 years of oppression. This had nothing to, oh yeah, let's not forget reparations. None of this was ever mentioned. Let them tell it though. They spoke for these so-called criminals, or shall I say black protesters. They spoke for them. Basically interpreting their brains and saying that, like us, they're just tired of white society. That wasn't true. They are taking advantage of white society. Not only were they taking advantage of white society, they were taking advantage of anyone who was benefiting from white society, including black people. It wasn't just white people that were looted from. There were mom and pop stores of which black people owned in downtown that they also stole from. They also stole from people who worked in these huge corporations that were not only just white people, but black people and others in between. So even when you want to sit there and say it's the language of the unheard, that these people were robbing because they were tired of 400 years of oppression, do you know that as a result of doing that, you also hurt your own people in the process? But in the name of your self-righteous cause, you sit there and you attempt to basically justify why it was okay for them to do so, in spite of the fact that it not only just hurt the corporations, but it hurt the very people that look like you and me. With that being said, that driving factor that Brandon has about we should not demonize the youth because of the actions that they are doing that are worth heavily criticizing, I think is absolutely counterintuitive. I think we should do it a lot more. The black community has a very bad habit of constantly saying that when you tell them something is wrong, they immediately tell you you're either judging them. God knows their heart. You can't tell them anything. They're grown. But more importantly, that they come up with every excuse in the world for why it's okay for them to do bad things. People have common sense. Let's even go with your point that yes, these so-called starved children of opportunities don't have the opportunities that, let's say, your average American family does. People who are put in the worst of situations don't always commit crime. And sometimes these liberal ideals, such as this whole thing about being impoverished and crime being correlated to impoverished societies, does not always lead to the causation of going and looting someone, going and killing someone, going and doing crime in general. Because just as there are bad people in these criminogenic societies you speak of, there are also good people in these criminogenic societies who choose not to do it. They would rather struggle, go through the process of struggling with their current conditions, attempting to find the necessary resources to get out of their situation or out of the jam that they're in, if they so choose, than to go and do harm unto others in order to basically help themselves to whatever it is that they want, even in spite of the fact that they're in a losing position. No one wants to be in a meager position. I don't think those, of course, who are fighting hard to get out of meager conditions want to be in there. But on average, the common sense folk don't want to be in those positions. Sometimes we're in positions in society where external factors can cause us to get there, but also sometimes our own life choices do it as well. But it is never justification to go around and stealing and robbing people of their stuff, beating people down, hurting them, terrorizing them in any way, shape, or form, whatever you wish to call it, because you're young, you don't have a lot, or you grew up in a home where things were difficult for you. I think all the more reason when people do face bad situations, or they have bad parents, or they had good parents and they didn't have what the next person had. I don't think it's conducive for a person to want to go around and just deliberately hurt people just because. I think deep in the back of every one of our minds, some of us do have the capacity to do, most of us have the capacity to do good and to just say, you know what, even though that person might have an iPad, I'm not going to steal his iPad. Even though that person might have on a 3-piece suit, I don't think I'm going to go and just rob them of their suit. Even though for some that might be the case, but that doesn't make it right. You might be in the worst of situations, but there's always legal routes to things before you proceed to do illegal things. That's my entire point. And even if you do choose the latter, I'm not going to tell you that you're right because you choose to do it. I understand that you may want to do it because life is hard and doing illegal things might lead to the faster route of making a lot of money, might lead to you getting what you want temporarily and instantaneously. Yeah, it gratifies you very shortly. I would agree with you on that. At the same token, that does not make it morally okay to go around and do. But most criminals, if I'm not mistaken, they don't do criminal things for moral reasons. But I'm only speaking as a person who's not motivated by those factors whatsoever. But speaking as a person that if I was placed in those positions, I'm going to do my very best to not be compelled to do harm unto others because I wouldn't want the same done unto me. And that's just common sense. I didn't come from a family that was born with a silver spoon either. But you don't see me going around looking to steal the silver spoon of others in order to justify my own insecurities that I wish I had what the next person had. Johnson makes it seem like that because you're young, that's an excuse for you to do the wrong. That's all the more reason to correct them at that age, because when they get older, they're going to be entitled and think that it's okay to keep going around and taking from people and not giving back to society and not actually working hard to try to build something for themselves. And even if you feel compelled to want to do these things, why not ask some of these same people for help? Be willing to just be open and say, listen, I'm in a bad position. I'm not where I want to be. I feel insecure. I feel envy. You have to first be honest with yourself, especially as a young man or a young woman. I'm in a bad position and I am looking for help. I'm looking for resources. Can you help me get there? Ask people for their knowledge. Some people are assholes. Admittedly, they are. Some people are not willing to give you what they know because for whatever the reason, they want to hone all the success to themselves. And that's not really true success. When you can sit there, you do everything that you want to do, but then you don't want to help anyone else get to where you're at. That's literally how society grows. They watch one person do it. The next person follows a similar path. They may not do exactly what you do, but you're a blueprint for them. And I think to bereft people of that ability to be as successful as you are is the reason why some of us get caught up in the positions that we're in. When you don't help people along the way. We are a interdependent society, whether if people want to accept, believe, like it or not. So I think the best thing you should do for your young people, whether if they're black, white, or in between, if they come to you for help, give them that help. That might actually also could help to contribute to reducing some of the crimes that we may have in the city. But my ultimate point in all of this is to say this. Brandon is wrong in all regards to what he's saying about, oh, we shouldn't demonize the children. We should shame the children for what they're doing because it is wrong. When people do wrong, we give them constructive criticism, do we not? Whether if they're on the job, whether if it's at home, or if it's in your daily dealings with people in general, you give them constructive criticism and you show them how to properly act when they are dealing with others. Going around, vandalizing, beating people up like fucking animals, doing just God knows what in the streets, wreaking havoc does not make your situation any better. And trying to blame corporations for the actions of individuals is not going to give the teenagers the moral high ground for looting. Looting is looting, no matter who it's coming from. Even if you want to blame corporations for what they do to blacks, whites, and brown people, as you've put it, what does that have to do with what the teens did that very day? And what they said they were going to do following the summer? It has absolutely nothing to do with that. But let you and Lightfoot tell it, because they're youth and they were going downtown to see the city because the weather was breaking and it was warm outside. That's not justification to go and do harm unto others. Where do you get that from? Did your mother and father teach you that when you were growing up, that, oh, when the weather breaks, go vandalize. When the weather breaks, go beat up that white person down the street. When that weather breaks, start shooting little kids. Start killing people like you and me, which much of it did happen. Matter of fact, a 6-year-old got shot in the arm, as well as a 15 and 16-year-old teenager during that very same takeover that happened in downtown Chicago. And also some similar takeovers have happened in other cities like San Francisco, California, where you had 100 people actually go into one gas station. And we've all seen the video. Some of us have seen the video where they're just looting the gas station, taking everything out of there. The police were supposed to go down there, but they were overwhelmed. Similarly, what's happening in Chicago. Now they're responding because of what happened as a result. But this is the problem. We're scaring people off with thinking that because these kids are black, you can't say anything to them. You should be able to say something to them. We're all humans here. We all have to live in this city together, whether if you're black, white, or in between. It should not matter what color of your skin that you are. And black people are not the only ones that are in impoverished situations. Just because they're black, that's not justification to sit up there and make excuses that because you're poor, that's the reason why you go out and here and do crime. That's not an excuse at all. They're not the first ones, and they certainly won't be the last ones that are in poverty. We all work hard for our money. We all work hard to be the best at what we can be. And even some of us are willing to even help those same people that you say are starved of opportunities to become the greatest. But the teenagers also have to want it themselves. We could want it for them all day long. Doesn't mean that they want it. You think every single teenager out there that just because you put a whole bunch of community centers in their neighborhoods, that all of them are going to just simply go to the community center and that just changes everything because you give them something to do? Some people, let's just call it for what it is, they're criminal minded, and even teenagers are the same way. And we have to deal with them accordingly. It's not ideal to want to put a bunch of teenagers in jail, but if we have to, we have to. Which in this case, we're talking about juvenile detention centers. And even that in and of itself is, it's light work compared to prison. But some of these crimes that these kids do, it's not right. And to sit there and act like it is says a lot about you, and it says a lot about your policies. But again, I dare to wonder why Chicago even voted for this man. I'm curious to know. You can tell it in the comments below of this video. Why did you vote for Johnson? And it's your absolute right to do so, but I would dare to wonder, what was your reasoning? What interest of yours was it in Johnson that you felt, let me vote for a man who's going to lay heavy taxes on us, as well as allow crimes to keep perpetuating throughout the city of Chicago. It's not merely just Johnson's fault in this. I also would place some degree of blame on the parents of these children, because this is complete negligence. If the parents were involved, and if the parents taught these children any degree of mannerisms, they wouldn't be doing half of the things that they're doing. Hence why I say for Johnson to sit there and say demonizing children is not very constructive. You know what isn't constructive? Not criticizing them for doing things that are demonizing in nature. There's nothing constructive about not saying anything at all. There's nothing constructive about not teaching our children what consequences actually mean in this country, what it means in the home, what it means in life. That's what's not constructive. Nobody's going around saying hang these kids. What we are saying is the problem needs to be addressed. And parents need to be encouraged to tell their kids, stop doing nonsense in the streets. But if you think it's okay to have a city where there's nothing but anarchy, chaos, lawlessness, allowing little kids and even adults, professional criminals, to just run rampant and just start beating people up, vandalizing, putting people in hospitals, making people lose limbs, making family members lose lives and having to grieve over their loved ones. If that's the kind of Chicago you want, if that's the kind of, for anybody that's listening to this from any state, if that's what you want, then let that be. Then die on that hill if that's what you believe in. which I doubt most of you do. But for some of you, I think you believe chaos is the natural order of things, and that's what you want. And you're going to get it. But like I say all the time, I pray it doesn't lead to you and your own ending, because that's what you choose. Because voting for him, I don't think it was ideal that people, of course, no one expected this to happen. But I think the response to it was so nonchalant. And it's almost as if he didn't care. And that kind of attitude is dangerous, especially as a leader, because we have 4 years with this man. I give him a year if he can last. I didn't vote for him in the first place. And I definitely didn't base it off of the color of his skin either, which I think in part is the reason why a lot of you voted for him, because he was black. But the other aspect is, I think he presented something perhaps people thought was very much more compelling than his opposing candidate presented. And probably because the other one was Democrat, but he had some Republican talking points. So that might have contributed to it. But I long to see what else Johnson is actually going to be able to do, because he just got in office. But saying the things that he said, and it's kind of expected because he is a progressive. He thinks in this manner. This is coming from the same man who actually doesn't give homework to children, and he basically never failed them. So you could even say in a proverbial sense, these are his children that are out here doing whatever it is they want to do. Because guess what? He doesn't fail these people. He allows them to succeed and think that looting is a form of succession. So when you have less expectations for people, expect stuff like that to happen. When you don't have a vision for kids, expect stuff like that to happen. Because you enable it. Lightfoot enabled it. That's why her ass got put out. She enables it. But I'm surprised we put someone in office who is Lightfoot on steroids, if you ask me. But I'll leave it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malik Washington. I pray that you all fare well in everything that you do. Have a good day or good night wherever you reside. And I thank you for listening if you got this far. Stay tuned until the next episode. With this, I say peace. Thank you for listening.